this week's Top Gear, another rather conventional design from Citroën. Has the Leopard changed its spots? The horror of car fires, a possible cause, and a new scheme for putting them out. And a great name returns with a new superbike for the 90s. Hello and welcome to this week's Top Gear. We're back here at Donington for this year's Radio Times Rallycross competition. At the moment, the 20 finalists are being put through their paces on the track, doing a variety of handling tests here in the paddock. Later on, they'll be trying out this Group N Vauxhall Nova on the rally stage through the forests. Tony Mason is eyeing their progress with great care. He'll be reporting later in the programme. But we start tonight with Citroën and the new ZX. In much modified form, of course. It's already proven itself to some extent by winning the Paris-Dakar raid. But Jeremy Clarkson's been to the south of France to test a rather more conventional version.
Citroën, a bit like Grace Jones really, has never been a slave to convention. Rather than follow in the footsteps of others, Citroën has always sought out different engineering solutions. Not necessarily better, but different nevertheless. This philosophy earned Citroën a small but fanatically loyal following. The trouble is that in the hard-nosed 90s, small followings are no good, no matter how fanatical they may be. You need sales, lots of sales, and that's where the new ZX comes in. This all-new car has to muscle in on Europe's most fiercely competitive sector, and it isn't going to beat the Escort and the Golf if half the people that take a test drive are frightened away by its strange idiosyncrasies. Citroën themselves say that they don't have a responsibility to make quirky cars that don't sell. They point to the DS's total sales figure in its 25-year life of 1.4 million. They need to sell that many ZXs in 25 months. So it's bye-bye hydro-pneumatic suspension, bye-bye crazy instruments, hello the grey suit. However, having been forced to make a conventional car, they've decided on a very unconventional marketing approach. Whereas most manufacturers offer a range of cars stretching from an underpowered cheapo to a zingy hot hatch, Citroën has taken a leaf out of the Fashion World's book and decided to offer what it's calling a collection. Now sure, some are cheaper than others, but each is designed to appeal to different people. I think we should have shot this on a catwalk. There's the Reflex. This is aimed at the young, trendy, perhaps female buyer. It's got colour-coded bumpers, natty side stripes and terrific yellow pinstriped upholstery. And then there's the Avantage. Now this has the same 1.4-litre engine as the Reflex, but it's aimed at an altogether more serious family man. No flamboyant colour-coded bumpers here. It's even got side rubbing strips. For the family man after a bit more in the way of luxury, there's the 1.6-litre fuel-injected Aura. And then there's the one that I'd like to have a go in, the 130 horsepower Volcan. However, I'm told that in the UK, this is going to be the bigger seller. So this is the one I'm going to go and drive. Not only did we eschew the Volcan, but we did the decent thing and scoured the south of France for some typically British weather. Now this engine's terrific. Basically, it's the same unit you get in a Peugeot 205 GTI. Although it has low gearing for good acceleration, it isn't even very noisy. My only beef is that a catalytic converter is relegated to the options list. However, the engine is not the best bit of the car. That accolade is reserved for the suspension. The ride is as close to faultless as you can get, but this does nothing to hurt the handling. Citroën have invented a new type of rear axle which helps here, allowing the rear wheels to steer in tandem with those at the front. This is probably the best chassis you can get in a small car. If it weren't for this badge here, I'd have an awful job believing this was a Citroën. It's all so normal. Proper dials, proper knobs, a two-spoke steering wheel. It even appears to be well made as well, though having said that, this seatbelt mounting broke earlier on today, and that's not good news. However, normalness doesn't mean it's bereft of clever touches. The stereo is of a type that would be useless in any other car, so there's no point stealing it. And the heating and ventilation system, joy of joys, is able to provide cold air to the face and warm air to the feet at the same time. Basically, this is a very well thought out, comfortable and spacious cockpit. Citroën fans will probably kill me for saying this, but I think this is one of the best interiors they've ever done. It's the little things. You can close the electric windows even after you've turned the engine off, and that's got to be sensible if you're forgetful like me. Now, the back all looks completely normal, but believe me, these seats are very wacky. Not only do the backrests recline, but also you can pull the whole thing forwards. If you're carrying a couple of rugby players, of course, you just slide it back. Will this new car sell? Well, providing it's priced properly, and knowing Citroën, it will be a very good car. But believe you me, so is the ZX. So to sum up, we like the clever seats, the ride and handling are in a class of their own, and the engine's pretty good too. We're less impressed, however, with this styling, and neither catalytic converters nor anti-lock brakes are standard. It does run on unleaded petrol, though.
Now, a couple of weeks ago, our road test was the Proton from Malaysia. We found water in the boot of one of two test cars. The importers, however, couldn't find the fault. They said they received only a handful of letters from customers in this country who'd had a similar problem. So how common is this difference of view between the customer and the manufacturer, and what can the ordinary car buyer do? Well, we'd like to hear from you with any major horror stories involving a new car bought over the past couple of years. All we need is a brief account of the circumstances and a daytime phone number. You can write to us at Top Gear, BBC Pebble Mill, Birmingham, B5 7QQ. That's Top Gear, BBC Pebble Mill, Birmingham, B5 7QQ. Please mark your envelopes problems. I'm afraid we can't reply to any letters individually, but look forward to hearing from you. Now, staying with problems for the moment, next Monday, the Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders will publish a report on the causes of fires in cars. The researchers working for ICE Ergonomics at Loughborough University have found, for example, that a 10-year-old car is 20 times more likely to catch fire than a new one. Now, clearly the thought of being trapped in a burning car is horrific, and Chris Goffey has been estimating the scale of the problems.
The terrible accident on the M4 last month resulted in 10 deaths and a couple of dozen burned-out vehicles. It was a particularly nasty example of the risks of cars catching fire, although in fact less than 5% of all car fires occur after accidents. In the last 20 years, the number of vehicle fires has tripled at a time when the number of road accidents has been stable. Leaving aside the big rise in those fires started deliberately, the suspicion is that in the present state of relative ignorance on causes, changes in car design may have contributed to that overall increase. With that number of fires around, you would have thought that vehicle designers would have identified and eliminated every possible cause of underbonnet fire. But now a new potential source of vehicle fires has been identified by a forensic scientist working for the Home Office.
I've done some research into brake fluids and found that the auto-ignition temperature, this is the temperature at which the fluid catches fire spontaneously, has dropped dramatically with the change in fluid that's gone on over the last few years. So this must be a factor.
Now, we all know that petrol is an extremely inflammable liquid. After all, that's what makes the internal combustion engine run. Now, you'd think if petrol came in contact with a very hot metal surface, a fire would be the instant result. Not so. I can squirt petrol onto this hot exhaust manifold. It vaporizes away instantly and there's no fire. Petrol needs a spark to make it ignite. Incidentally, I don't advise you to do that trick. This is the old brake fluid we used to have in cars, the old Crimson. Again, I can squirt that on a manifold. Lots of smoke, but no fire, nothing happens. Now, unfortunately, Crimson wasn't up to the demands of today's modern brake systems with the very high temperatures associated with disc brakes in particular. So the manufacturers came up with this, which is modern brake fluid. Now, if I squirt that on, yes, you see a merry little blaze. The fluid ignites spontaneously on the manifold. It's just simply contact with hot metal that causes it. Although the engine is only idling, so the exhaust pipe is not as hot as it could be, for instance, on a motorway. This is another modern brake fluid, silicon-based. I squirt that on. Fair amount of a smoke, but no fire. And that's because it's oil-based, but there are disadvantages in silicon fluid. So how do manufacturers cope with quite large quantities of this sort of fluid under their bonnets? Well, Vauxhall mount a snap-on reservoir straight on the top of the master cylinder. It's fine in normal circumstances, but in a heavy accident, it can become detached from the master cylinder and come forward. Same's true of Ford. Again, quite an insecure container mounted and snapped into the top of the master cylinder. In this accident, investigated by John Goss, a small fire that burned the bonnet, air filter and plug leads was caused by a snap-in brake fluid reservoir coming out. It sprayed the hot exhaust manifold, but as the fire didn't spread, the plastic reservoir was found intact under the bonnet. Normally, they're completely burned in the fire, disguising their possible role as a cause.
I found in my test that the snap-on reservoir will pull off at a 20 pounds pull. This means that you're going to talk in terms of 20 to 30 G decelerations, the sort of forces that you get in modest accidents in the 20 to 30 mile an hour range.
Other manufacturers take a different view. The Rover Group, for instance, securely pin their reservoir to the top of the master cylinder. And on the Peugeot 405, even though it's got a snap-in reservoir, it's all located behind a separate bulkhead so that it can't possibly come in contact with the engine.
These problems should have been identified by the EC barrier test, and that hasn't been realistic in the past. The barrier test should be carried out with the engine running, the electrical system working, and the exhaust manifold system up to working temperature. If that had been carried out in the past, then I'm pretty sure this problem would have been identified very much earlier.
No matter how careful the manufacturers are, there are still bound to be some car fires. Now, if it happens to you, what do? You don't open the bonnet to see what's going on. That just admits more air to the fire and makes it even worse. If you've got a proprietary extinguisher, you're supposed to aim it through a narrow gap in the bonnet, the source of the fire. That's very difficult to do, and of course the container isn't very big and runs out before the fire is finished. Now there's a new system on the market called Firetrace. It's an automatic system. Now we're going to simulate an underbonnet fire. I've got a tin of petrol here and a cloth. My pyromaniac assistant is going to put a match to it. Yeah, so that's blazing nicely. Well, that's certainly put the fire out. What's happened is a pressurised container of halon runs through this plastic tube. Now, where the tube has ruptured, it's directed a jet of halon directly at the source of the fire, and it snuffed it straight out. The same system can be used in any electrical wiring installation, either in buildings or behind a car's instrument panel. A localised fire is quickly extinguished. The pressure gauge indicates a discharge has occurred unless an audible alarm or flashing light on the dash is fitted as well. But that's all very well for a relatively small underbonnet fire. What happens in an accident if you're trapped in the car, perhaps unconscious, in a pool of burning petrol? Well, we've got that pool of burning petrol, which my assistant is going to set a match to. This test car is equipped with another cylinder and a line running round the underside of the engine bay. So let's see what happens. The device certainly seems to work very effectively indeed. It'll be available on the aftermarket, but I think it's too important to leave to somebody to decide to fit to their car. It's something all manufacturers should be fitting as standard. And just to show, this rather singed Vauxhall Cavalier still works.
Well, let me just repeat Chris's warning. Please don't try out those experiments for yourself because, of course, they can be very dangerous. That apparently anonymous car park was at the fire extinguisher factory itself. And we had lots of skilled people standing by just out of sight in case something went wrong. Now, as it happened, we didn't need the fire brigade, but just to put the whole thing in its context, only 1 in 500 injuries to car occupants is caused by fire. Now, I've come back inside the Donington collection, not this time to look at their single-seaters, but to look at some very special bikes, because this magnificent collection here commemorates the career of Mike Hailwood, a great bike racing hero of the 60s. Now, his success on Hondas and Suzukis coincided with a huge increase in the sales of Japanese bikes in this country and the decline of our own bike manufacturers like Biza and Matchless and Triumph. Now, the good news is that Triumph is fighting back with this new superbike called the Trophy, one of a range of 3 new models to go on sale this year. And Eric Richard, otherwise known as Sergeant Bob Cry of the Bill, a long-time Triumph fan, tried it out for us.
Meriden, known by some as the centre of England and the home of Triumph motorcycles. In the 70s, the factory was the scene of a workers' sit-in, followed by a cooperative before becoming a limited company again in 1980. In 1983, the money ran out, and after 40 years, production finally ceased and the factory demolished. The Bonneville was still built in small numbers, under licence in Devon right up to 1988. Triumph Twin started life back in 1937 with the 500cc Speed Twin, and over the years evolved models with such evocative names as Trophy, Tiger, and Thunderbird. This one's nicknamed the Bathtub, but this is the model everyone remembers most fondly, and I am no exception. This is the Bonneville, the epitome of a boy's dreams in the 60s and 70s. This particular model is a Jubilee. Now, the Bonneville takes its name from the home of the world record attempts, the Bonneville Salt Flats in the United States of America. This was the bike to own. But high-tech had arrived from the east, and few buyers wanted traditional temperament and oil leaks. But the final nail was probably that the old air-cooled engines would be unable to meet the tighter emission and noise controls. And in 1988, 30 years after its debut, the Bonneville was finally laid to rest. But Triumph has the knack of coming up again. This is the 3rd time. The name is similar, but the new Triumph is nothing like the old one. Triumph has arisen with names from the past. This is the fully faired sports tourer, the 1200 Trophy. Shortly there will follow the Daytona Pure Sports and the unfaired sports tourer Trident. The 3-model range will have a choice of engines, 750, 900, 1000 and 1200 cc in 3 and 4-cylinder forms. And it's British. Well, most of it. Now I want to see if it's better than my old Bonnie. For such a large machine, it feels nimble and responsive. Slightly heavy steering, but the suspension soaks up the potholes without feeling too soft, a la BMW. At night, I found the indicator warning lights a little too bright, causing distraction, and I was very disappointed with the headlight. For such a powerful machine, it was just not up to the job. The 1204 is very torquey, as a tourer should be. It just rolls on the power from low revs and wait for it, no vibration. The frame is not exactly high-tech, being made out of steel and having a spine-type layout, but it is stiff. It's a lovely machine, but at the moment, it's not sure what it wants to be, a tourer or a sports. I think it should be a tourer and give BMW something to really worry about. I'm going to put it on its side stand because it's a big motorcycle, and where the grab handle is doesn't help you to get it up onto its centre stand. That's when it's stationary, but on the move, it's a really nice motorcycle. Big, strong, lusty engine, sounds like a real bike, feels like one, handles well, steers well, brakes well. But a bit cramped as a riding style. I couldn't really call it a tourer. I wouldn't want to do more than an hour, hour and a half in this saddle. Gap between here and the handlebars is too cramped. And for my wife, sitting on the back, you can see the distance from there to the footrest makes it very cramped. And also, you arrive at a hotel, you've got nowhere to put your baggage, although I gather custom-made equipment is coming later. The controls are nicely laid out. Good instrumentation, though I always think with a tourer you should have a clock. And speaking again of tourers, this didn't keep much wind or rain off me. I'd like to see the screen a lot higher and perhaps curved like the BMW tourer. There are some nice details, like these adjusters on the controls, but now you can see my hands are stuck out in the breeze. This fairing just isn't wide enough for a tourer.
And as you can see, another problem with such a narrow fairing is that the mirrors don't stick out far enough, and all you get is a good picture of your elbows.
With Norton in the doldrums, the new Triumph is seen by many as the real revival of the British motorcycle industry. The Trophy has been on the market in Germany for the last 6 weeks, where all of them were pre-sold. And at £6,850 in Britain, it is competitively priced against its opposition. In a market where many born-again motorcyclists would like to buy British, this is the opportunity for Triumph to shine.
Perhaps in the future, a Bonnie. Now it's back to four wheels in the 4th Radio Times Rallycross competition. And since early this morning, the 16 men and 4 women who've made it through to the finals have been battling it out on the track and in the paddock. And Tony Mason has been keeping a close watch on their progress.
Before the finalists were let loose among the trees, they were given the more mundane task of changing a wheel, because even the best rally drivers get punctures. They received basic instruction on the Donington racetrack in Astra GTEs before showing their prowess on fast tarmac. Then a little precision driving among some very craftily placed cones. But back to the heavy work. There was a lot of physical exertion required here, for it took a 100-yard run across the car park to collect the car. The finalists then had to drive it through a figure of 8 and park it between the cones before changing the wheel. And all against the stopwatch, which recorded a fastest time of just under 3 minutes for the whole performance, which was rounded off by returning through the figure of 8 and back to the start line. Colette Ritten was having more problems than most here. Where was that first gear?
One of the biggest mistakes I've noticed so far today is everybody's shuffling their hands around on the steering wheel like an old granny. Your right hand remains in that position at all time when you're driving around the circuit.
All the aspects of the competition are very important and count towards the overall results. But let's face it, the main purpose of the day is to assess driving ability. And the drivers get their first chance of a real go behind the wheel out here on the deserted Donington racetrack under the eagle eyes of professional racing instructors. That looked very interesting, Graham. What happened there?
Well, he asked us to pull in to the left and slow down. I thought perhaps someone's going to overtake me or something. But then he asked for drop in a second, push it through, so I pushed it through flat out through the chicane. And then I sensed he pulled the handbrake on and got it quite sort of sideways through the last corner there, and a large amount of noise and smoke everywhere, and had to control it to keep it going straight through the straight.
But if you've got the line correct, when you get to the yellow cone, the car will physically go towards the blue cone because it is the correct line for the circuit.
He made it look very easy, and it's a lot harder than I thought. I'm used to the bit of forest, and I'm trying to flick it in and everything, and it's a lot more smoother on the circuits. Kept missing the blue cone completely.
Really like the track. It's really nice and flowing and quite fast. Quite enjoyed it.
I've never been on tarmac before like that, in that sort of a car. But once I've been around a few times, it was, you get your lines right, it was great. But I think that was the most difficult to grasp. But I think I got it by the end of the run.
After their time alongside the instructor, each competitor was assessed by the same man, well-known saloon car racer Chris Hodgins, who was looking for those essential characteristics, smoothness and balance.
8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Halfway through the day, and the finalists are starting to settle down. In fact, there's a great camaraderie built up between them, and all starting to really enjoy themselves. But now it's time for the butterflies to return, because the driver's going to have to be let loose on the loose surfaces through the trees to show their skill, and that's what rallying's all about. With one of the most coveted prizes in motorsport on offer, a drive on the Lombard RAC Rally in November, this is the test that matters. Each contestant drove a short special stage with top rally driver Dave Metcalf strapped alongside, observing their every move, and sometimes hanging on for dear life. 19-year-old Francine Bogg from Hull has reached national championship level in water skiing. She told me that she thinks the balance required for that sport is just as important in a rally car. Win or lose, this was to be the crucial part of the day.
This is the best bit of it, I think. This is like what's going to make it all. But I've thoroughly enjoyed the day. It's been great. It's been like the best day out I've ever had, I think. But really looking forward to this.
Nick Jeekins from Basildon is a JCB driver by trade. He's used to going over rough terrain, but certainly not at this speed in the digger. But maybe it was his off-road motocross experience that helped him clock one of the fastest times of the day.
We saw you going sideways over here, and that was the handbrake, wasn't it?
Yeah, I couldn't suss it out. If I had a bit more time in the motor just to get used to it, it would have been all right, but still, that's it, isn't it? That's the competition. I missed the corner, but I was just like trying to concentrate too much and like just get carried away. It's great. Brilliant day out.
What did you think of the rally stage, Gavin? Well, that was excellent. That's the first time I've ever driven a rally car. I mean, I haven't even been to watch a rally yet. I just watched them on telly. Not as good as some of the others, I don't think, but I tried my hardest. I really enjoyed it.
So, what about that, Angus?
Oh, it was great fun. It was a very quick car, very nimble, very capable.
Was that what you expected in there?
I think it was a bit more. It was all over the place sometimes, but it's just all the stones. It was just great. The back end was going, but I kept it in a straight line.
So, a good time had been had by all. But for the winner from among those young hopefuls, there will be just 7 short months before they'll drive on Britain's biggest motorsport event. On hand to present the keys of the car, World Ladies Rally champion Louise Aitken-Walker, who this week was herself awarded the prestigious Seagrave Trophy.
It's never been as tough as it has been this year. It really has. But the winner of the 1991 Radio Times Rallycrest competition is Francine Bogg.
Yay!
Well done. If you'd like to come and meet Louise, she'll give you the car keys for the Vauxhall Nova.
There you go. Have a good time.
Well done.
Right, Francine, well, you've just received the keys to the rally car from your heroine, Louise Aitken-Walker. What about that? How does it feel?
Wonderful. Brilliant. Really good.
So what's going to happen now?
Well, I'm just going to go from strength to strength, carry on. Want to be where she is in the end.
I think she's just got to stick in and do her best and really try hard and, go out there and win. Show the men how to go.
So what's the first thing that you do now?
Go out here, drive home and, I don't know, on the way home. Cry all the way.
Well, our warmest congratulations to young Francine, the second lady to win this competition in 4 years. We shall be following her progress very keenly during the summer as part of the build-up to the Lombard RAC in November. That's all for this week. Next week, we're at Silverstone, watching the Vintage Sports Car Club meet. Tiff will drive a few classic Grand Prix cars. We've got a road test on the latest Hyundai from Korea, the Lantra. See you then. Until then, drive safely. Goodbye.